So here I am. It's a Wednesday evening. Um, had a pretty decent day. Had to buy a new refrigerator and continue my project out in the garage to get ready for hopefully some new vlogs. We'll see. I got something in the works, but I don't want to start talking about it out loud yet until it gets done. But anyways, a little tired. Been working pretty hard today at work and at home, but gonna keep the vlogs going. So to continue off the story of John, the story of me, I kind of went through a brief life history for myself and who I am and the important people in my life, many of which are no longer here. Both sets of grandparents are gone. My little brother's gone. My mom's gone. It's just me and my dad pretty much. So in that last video, 90% of the people I showed you were, no more. But it's okay. Part of life is continuing on and pressing on, even through loss and hardship. So that's what I'm here to do. And I want to continue to talk about, I want to give you the overview of my musical life. In the same way that I went over my real life, I want to talk about my musical life. And I wanted to separate the two because I feel like both journeys, even in you as an artist, no matter what your art is, the journey of your life and the life of your art are two separate paths that come from the same source. I don't know how else to say it. It's two different perspectives, two different timelines almost in my mind, yet they influence each other. And one is your artist's journey and one is your life journey. And they both influence each other. I really want to emphasize that. I've said it twice. I want to really drive that home, but at the same time, they're uniquely separate. So my mother, as a part of my homeschooling, I would have to play piano. And so she bought a keyboard that hooked to the computer, which was really fancy back in that day. And you could play piano along and have a virtual teacher. And so I learned how to play piano like that. I did it for a couple years and got okay. I'm not the greatest at it, and learned a little bit of sight reading. And I can read music. I just don't do it enough to be a good sight reader. But I learned that. And later on in life, I learned musical theory. But anyways, so I played piano and I was okay at it. What I liked more about piano versus, having mom and dad, versus playing the guitar is that having mom and dad say, hey, that's cool. That was what was neat about piano. It wasn't so much at the time about the piano or the keyboard, electric keyboard, however you want to look at that. It was more so about the accolades. Well, the guitar was about the guitar. So I kind of went through a phase where I started to get into rock music because of my parents. And in that time period, I kind of wanted to play the drums. I really was drawn towards the drums, and I liked it a lot, but we didn't really live in that big of a house and didn't have a lot of money, and my mom didn't want me making all that noise. And so eventually I got a guitar. So what made me really want to play the guitar? What really wanted me to play the guitar, and I've told this in a couple of podcasts, chatcasts, and I think one of the main videos that we do on Mondays, I talked about this. And basically it was coming back on my dad's Ford from the grocery store in the middle of town, listening to Metallica on KSHE, And I listened to music that was about a decade old, almost 15 years old by the time I got around. So I'm kind of like a generation behind. I really wasn't into the music my peers were into. It was all about Image when I was growing up. Big time about Image. And I wasn't into it. I wanted musicianship, and that was the music right before that. Was really musician-driven music. Was very much focused on the instrumentalist, and I enjoyed that. And I wanted that, and I wanted to continue to pursue that. So Metallica, Megadeth, Alice in Chains, a lot of older metal bands. And then that's, kind of what started my journey with wanting to play metal and specifically guitar. And so then they got me an electric guitar, purple and white Fender. I'll show a picture of it. I've shown it in the chatcast. Fantastic guitar. And that's what started the journey, was that and a cheap little crate practice amp, a 112 speaker, and just going at it, man. Going at it and going at it. I'm really pouring my heart and soul into it. It took me months before I was impressed with myself. And it took a long time to get good at playing the guitar. It's just kind of a unique feeling, a different experience that I wasn't quite used to. And I tend to analyze things a lot, so it took me a while to unpack and analyze it. But I really enjoyed it, and I still play it to this day, and I love it to death. I've got right around, golly, 20 years experience playing guitar, right around, and it's awesome. I mean, that opened a whole world of musical theory. So then, I had one of my most influential guitar teachers is a guy named Mike. He taught me how to do musical theory, and I just ran with it. I had Doug was my first guitar teacher. He really got me acclimated to the instrument. And then a guy named Mike really took me to a new direction with musical theory. And then a guy named Scott helped me work through jazz and stuff like that. So those are my three local guitar teachers that I had. And a younger guy named Ryan, he helped me later in my life kind of reacquaint myself with guitar, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. So anyways, musical theory, when I learned musical theory from Mike, that really took me in a whole nother direction, and I spent many years working on musical theory. And a lot of times when my peers are going to parties and hanging out and doing everything like this, now don't get me wrong, I wasn't an angel. I was a degenerate like anyone is, and still currently am. So I did plenty of weird stuff, but I would often pick, if the opportunity arose to go out on a Friday night, I would choose to stay at home. Now, Saturday, you might catch me out, but Friday, I would choose to stay home, and I would work on my stuff. And Saturday would be the day that I would maybe go out if something was going on. It was usually a little more docile on Saturdays, but kind of similar to a Friday. And I did that a lot. I played a lot of guitar. I worked a lot on music production, software stuff. A lot of it self-taught. I had to get books. I remember at one point in time, I talked to people at SIUE about what curriculum they used for their sound engineering. I had a guy I met at a local guitar store told me, I just asked him. I knew he was in the program. So I self-taught that. There's a lot of really neat things that I did in my journey, and there's so much to talk about. And I wanted to have this a little more strung together and coherent, but as you can tell, my mind is kind of frazzled and I'm a little rambling, but that is like the nuts and the bolts of where I went. And the bands that really stuck with me were in this order: was Metallica, Alice in Chains, Cataclysm, and Megadeth kind of happened at the same time. Meshuggah, and then Cataclysm. So it was like Metallica, and I found like all the big ones then, which was Megadeth and, Pantera and stuff. But Metallica really stuck with me. And then I went to Meshuggah, and then Cataclysm, great death metal band. And Meshuggah is really just hugely influential to me. A bunch of classical guitar players, different things like that. I really draw so much influence and so much from all over the place. It's hard for me to even discuss what bands made the biggest impact on me. But I would have to say Metallica, Meshuggah. Yeah, I mean, that's it, really. That's pretty much why I still do what I do. And I have a lot of fun doing it. I mean, there's so many bands that I listen to. I listen to so much, but those ones were really pulled me through the tough years in life. When people talk about the bands that got them through being a teenager, those were mine there. And Alice in Chains, that trifecta: Alice in Chains, Metallica, Meshuggah, and it grew a lot from that. And those bands really helped me reach a part of music that stuck with me. And while I listen to really sad or intense music, I use it, I guess, to process the loss that's been in my life, and that's where I let it out. And I don't let the loss out in any other place. I try not to. And so I think that's why I listen to such intense, dark, heavy music or sad music, is because that's where losing your mom, your brother, your grandparents at young stages in your life, at times in your life where it's just the last thing you needed. Not that you need anyone to die ever, but for me, it just happened in a way. And I'm not trying to garner sympathy, but it was hard. And so that's why I listen to these darker bands and that have these darker lyrics, is I feel like it's more connected to life, and it helps me get that out of my system. And I just love it. Can't live without it. So that's kind of a brief view of that. And that's so brief. I mean, there's so many things I can talk about. My first metal show and how nervous I was. And I got to cut this off right now, and we got to revisit this. I didn't think that I would have this much to say about myself in this regard, but I have more to say probably about my musical life than I do my actual private life, my real life. I'm going to leave it at this. Sorry for rambling a whole bunch, but I have fun sharing aspects, and this gave me a bunch of ideas for the future when it comes time to talk about myself again. So tune in on Friday. I'll wrap this whole thing up on the week of John as we reset our projects.